Hello, everyone, and welcome to Papercuts. I'm Ben Vanderberg, Principal Product Evangelist here at Adobe, coming to you live from YouTube here. So Papercuts is a monthly show that we're doing here to help you learn more and get the most out of Adobe Document Services APIs. And we also have a team of experts here to help answer any of the questions that you have around our APIs. So if you're not familiar with Adobe Document Services, it is a set of APIs that help you drive document automation within your apps and tools. From the beginning of being able to dynamically create documents using document generation API to take your Word documents, your data, kind of merge those together. And we're going to learn a lot more about that today as part of this episode. What it also is things like PDF Tools API, which is all those different actions that you might commonly do inside of Acrobat, like creating PDFs, exporting, turning them into other formats, merging documents. All those types of transformations are what PDF Tools helps. Then when you want to take those PDF documents and put them on your website and get analytics on those, that's where PDF Embed API allows you to be able to embed those PDFs onto your website and be able to then get analytics and metrics and create really cool, stunning experiences with your PDFs. We also have things like Adobe Sign API for being able to capture electronic signatures securely on whatever device you're on, and meeting all those different global requirements for identity and electronic signature. Then what's also coming soon is our PDF Extract API, which is all around being able to take data from your PDFs and be able to extract them out to be able to republish them or reuse the data in those PDFs. So lots of cool stuff and lots of great topics that we can be talking about as part of this show. So again, this is live. So please, if you have any questions, please drop them into the comments down below and we'll be happy to get to them as we're going through the show today. Well, I'm not alone today. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite our experts to come right on and introduce you to the team here. So Joel, why don't you say hi? Joel, you're on mute.
Yeah, it helps to unmute.
Yes, it does.
Hi, folks. My name is Joel Geraci, and I work with Ben on the evangelism team for our services APIs.
Awesome. Alicia, why don't you say hi?
Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Dvorak, and I am a product marketing manager for the Document Services APIs. So I handle go-to-market, and I work with all these lovely folks here today.
Awesome. And Ray.
Hi, I'm Raymond Camden. I'm on the evangelism team with everybody on screen here. Been at the company for like 5 weeks, so make sure you ask me the hard questions.
Yes, all the hard questions go to Ray. So what we're going to do to start off today is we're going to talk, give you a little bit of news of some of the latest updates that are going on with Document Services. And then our main topic today, we're going to be talking about introducing Document Generation API, and Ray's going to walk us through all of that. So to start off, Alicia, what do you got for us from the news standpoint?
Okay, thanks, Ben. So what's first in the news today is Document Generation API. And so really, that's an API that we just released about a month ago. If you've ever done any kind of mail merging, it acts in a similar function where you're going to send a Word template into our API along with JSON data, and all of your dynamic fields will get populated with a high-fidelity PDF file or a Word file. So it's very simple. And we also have a page on our website that shows you all about the cool features of it. But basically, Document Generation API allows you to take things like agreements and sales proposals or invoices and automate that process of that creation of those documents with dynamic data And it's got support for things like calculations and other items as well, like repeating rows. I want to show you really quickly for those developers out there that we give you everything you need to get started with this very quickly. First, I'd like to point out these sample files here. So the samples are going to give you a sample Word template along with JSON file to just dynamically generate everything and send that request into the API. So you've got a lot of different sample files for different use cases here on the website. In addition to that, we offer a Word add-in that Ray will show you how it works a little bit later on. And then down here, we provide a nice, easy get started steps. So in that process, you will get an SDK that gives you all the example files that you need to just hit the ground running. So I don't think I'll take any more time with that. I'm going to hand it back off to you, Ben, for the next news item.
Awesome, super exciting. And again, we're going to learn a whole lot more about that coming up in just a few moments. So with that, why don't I pass it over to Ray? Ray, what do you got for some news items for today?
Sure. So I want to talk about our REST APIs. We have nice documentation about how to use everything we're talking about today, the tools APIs. While we provide SDKs for Node, for Java, for .NET, if you're using a platform that's not supported there, or if you just want a bit more control over how you are using our services, the REST API gives you really fine-grained control to work with what we have to offer. Along with documentation on how to use these APIs, we also have a Postman collection that you could quickly import and start testing and see how the inputs work and see how the outputs works. Over to you, Ben.
Awesome, thanks a lot there. Yeah, the REST APIs and the as well as the Postman collections make it much easier to get started using some of those APIs. And also, don't forget also we also have the Node, the Java, the .NET SDKs that also are great accelerators to incorporate those SDKs in there. Thanks a lot, Ray. Joel, let's see what we got from your end.
So in one of the more recent releases of our Embed API, we've released the ability to find text or search for text inside the viewer. So you can actually replace the find functionality that's in native to the viewer itself. So if you go to our documentation for the Embed API, just scroll down to the Viewer API section. And if you go down a little bit past all the zoom features, you can find the search APIs. Now, when you enable the search APIs, you'll actually be disabling the native search capability. But then at that point, you are controlling the user interface and the user experience for searching through the PDF file in question. So once you've enabled those things, you can get callbacks for when the results have been updated. In other words, when it's found some new text. And then you can easily navigate through to the next or previous search, and then of course clear that out. So all this is documented in the, obviously, documentation, and there's nothing you need to do to download this particular version. If you are loading up Embed API, you will always get the latest version, so you can just begin using these APIs without having to install anything new. And back to you, Ben.
Cool, awesome, thanks. All right, so I got one news item myself here, which is some of the new connectors that we've made available within Microsoft Power Automate. So if you're not familiar with Microsoft Power Automate, it's a low-code solution available as part of Microsoft 365 that allows you to create easy workflows that tie into your tools inside of Microsoft 365, as well as all sorts of other applications. And those include things like Adobe PDF tools, so all those APIs that we were just talking about, Adobe Sign, and Creative Cloud. And one of the great things that we've also incorporated into there is that you can also take that stuff and you can use the templates that are already available in there to automate many of those document processes that you have. So for example, if you take a document that are old scanned PDFs and you drop them into SharePoint, you can use the OCR service to automatically analyze those PDFs and then make them into something searchable. So when you then search in SharePoint, it'll actually index and find those documents there. There's also a variety of other ones. One of the things that I've seen a lot with people is being able to merge and also remove and extract different pages or convert those documents into different formats. All of those are available as templates, but again, you can also incorporate those into any of your flows inside of Power Automate. So super cool way to be able to take advantage of your different workflows there. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to move on to our main topic, which is about document generation API. And this is where I'm going to pass it over to Ray, who's going to walk us through how all the getting started with the document generation. So Ray, take it away and let's learn more about document generation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. So this is something that I'm really excited about. It's been a lot of fun to play with this because the actual API is really simple. I'm going to show the code in a second, but it takes in 2 inputs and outputs. It's really simple. Where things get really kind of fun and you can get kind of complex is how you work with the templates. So let me get started by showing a real simple example. I have a Word document here that I spent a lot of time formatting, as you can tell. It's got a header and it's got a bit of text. You may notice something a bit different about that header, the kind of bracket name thing. I'm going to explain that in a minute, but for right now, just imagine me being able to take that and exchange that for real data. But here is, again, a very simple Microsoft Word document. Now I'm going to show you the code. I will be showing Node.js, but everything I'm doing can be done in Java, in .NET, or via our REST-based APIs. One of the first things I did was grab the Node SDK, and you can see that on the first line. And then the rest of the code is pretty much the exact same as our documentation shows. I've enhanced it just a tiny bit to make it easier to show. So for example, I have a variable saying what my input is. In this case, it's the Microsoft Word document that I just showed on screen. And I'm also specifying where I want to save it. Now, what our service is going to do is going to take that input Word document, and it's going to take some data, and it's going to merge it together and output either a PDF or a new Word document. My data in this case is really, really simple. It's also hard-coded in this script. Typically, your data would come from a database, from an API. It wouldn't be hard-coded static information like you see in my script. So essentially, all I'm going to do is start working with our SDK. I'm going to get my credentials, which I have in my file system, things like my client ID, my private key, etc. Pretty much all of our services is going to start off by creating a credentials object. I'm going to pass this to an execution context. And then I'm going to start setting my options. And for the most part, the only thing I wanted you to notice here is that I'm specifying that I want PDF as my output. If I wanted a Word document, it would literally be typing in docx. But I want a PDF, so I'll keep it as that. I specify what my input file is, and again, that's a variable I created earlier. And then literally, I call it, and then that's it. So let me actually run this and kind of show you what it does. And I named it node1.js because I'm very creative. So it's taking that Word document, it's taking my data, which again was hard coded, and when it was done, it made a PDF, which I'm going to open right now, and we will see. Hello, Raymond Camden, you are really awesome. So if I want to modify that a bit, I'm going to close that. I'm going to go back to my Word document. I'm just going to add a bit of text. And I'm going to say that I'm really awesome because I use italics. I'm going to save that. And I'm not going to change my code really, except for changing my name from my name to my wife's. Save that and run it again. So again, passing that Word document, and essentially all I did was modify the formatting a bit, and then my data changed a tiny bit. And now when I open up the PDF, I see the new name and the new formatting as well. So what's cool is that I've shown you the entire API. Like, we're done code-wise. Where things get interesting and where you'll spend a majority of your work is working in that Word document and working with your data. But code-wise, you're not going to change anything. Again, I'm not even going to show any more Node.js code again. I have a utility CLI that I've written that basically handles all cases, and all I do is pass in a Word document and my JSON, and it handles running the API call for me. So I'm going to show you more of a real-world scenario example, and I'm going to show you the output first. And what I have here is an invoice as a PDF. You see an invoice number, you see my information, my address, my billing address. That is my phone number. Feel free to give me a call right now. I won't pick up. And then beneath this, I have the line items for my invoice. I purchased a number of cats, and you can see for each one, the price per cat, the quantity, and at the very bottom, I print how much total I spent for this invoice. So let me kind of walk you through how we would build this. Close that output, and I am going to start off with a document I have called invoice.docx. And I've done a little bit of the work ahead of time just to get things started, but now I want to start using our API. So one of the things that we did is that we created a Word add-in that makes working with the service a heck of a lot easier. If you remember back in my initial example, I had bracket, bracket name, close bracket, bracket. As a developer, I recognize, oh, that's a variable. That's pretty easy to use. For non-developers, they may need a bit more help working with the template system. For that, we have the Word add-in. And I'm going to open that up right now. And I'm going to say get started. And what it's going to do is it's going to ask me for some sample data. Now I have, back in my editor, I have a file called invoice.json. And basically, this is the data that you saw in the final example. Now, if I'm working with a database, if I'm working with an API call of some sort, what I may do then is simply grab one particular record, one particular user, in this case, one particular invoice data. I'm going to get that sample data. And once I have that, it's going to be easier to use that with my Word document. So I'm going to go ahead and upload my JSON file. And there it is. And I'm going to ask the add-on to generate tags. It's looking at my JSON. And what it's doing is it's actually recognizing the variables and the data that I have in there so that I can start using it in my document. So the first thing I want to do is include the invoice number. So I'm going to go up here in the header, I'm going to tab a few times. I'm just going to double click on the tag generated by the add-in, and bam, that's it. So I'm going to go here and do the same thing for name. That's customer name. I'm going to come in here for email, do customer email, and for phone, do customer phone. And I'm going to stop right here. Whenever I work on anything at all, I always take baby steps. So I do 1 or 2 steps, make sure it works, and then keep going. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this to our API. I'm going to use this Word template. Let me make sure I save it. And I'm going to use the invoice.json. I have a command line tool called generic.js where I tell it the name of my input file, the name of the output I want, in this case, invoice.pdf, and also my JSON data. So I'm going to hit enter. And again, it's just calling our API. I don't need to show the code because it's pretty much the exact same code I showed before. And now that I'm done, we can take a look at that PDF and we should see the beginning of our invoice. And there we can see it. And if for some reason, like I didn't like that text being over more, what's cool is that I'm not going in and editing my code. I'm just going back to my Word document and saying, hey, let's get rid of one of those tabs. So that is an example of just kind of simple variable replacement. but we could do something a bit more complex as well. So my invoice wants to include a fax number, but I only want to include that if it exists. It is 2021. We really shouldn't be using fax numbers, but unfortunately, we still do. So one of the things I noticed is that I did modify my JSON data earlier. It was called customer fax, not customer fax 2, but we'll just pretend that that's what it is. I'm gonna go into my advanced tab here, and one of the things that we can do is say, I want to do something if a variable exists. So again, what's nice is that this add-on, it's looked at my data, it knows what I have, and I'm gonna scroll down to customer fax 2, and while I can do things like, is a value equal to something, is it less than or greater than, I could also just say, hey, if this variable exists, use it. So I clicked if present, I hit insert condition, and what it did is it dropped in the code that I need to render if a particular value exists. In this case, it's a conditional section tag, and I'll go in here and just type in like so. And I could type in that tag, but I'm lazy. So I'll just do that and save it. All right, so now if I load, now I look at my JSON data, I do have a customer fax 2. I should see this in my output. I'm gonna run the same call again, but do it all in one command line operation. So it's taken the Word document, I modified it, my data hasn't changed. I'm merging it, and I'm getting my output, I get my fax number. Now, if I remove that fax number from my data, it's gonna come in here and rename it and run it again. Now my Word document will notice that that value is not there. All of that text won't show up, and my PDF will just not show it. So I'm gonna do the same for my address. And I'm going to save me some typing here and just copy and paste this in and put it down below. And I'm going to do the same thing for billing address. And basically all I'm doing here, let me paste this in to show you how it looks. All I'm doing here is that I'm looking at my data. I know, and hopefully you know what your data is. I know how my billing system works. I know that, for example, some people will have a fax number and some won't. And some will have a billing address and some won't. So basically, essentially all I'm doing is kind of reusing those tags, kind of gradually building down my template, adding more information to get closer to that final result I want. I'm going to save this and let's run it again. Again, I like to make sure that I haven't broken anything. I will say, if you do mess something up, if you put a bad tag in or whatever, typically our API does a pretty good job of telling you that it wasn't able to parse things. So that's something to keep in mind. You could look at that output to see if you've made a mistake of some sort. All right, so I've shown simple variables. I've shown how to do basic conditions. Another kind of cool thing that we can do is iterate. Now we can iterate over a table or we can iterate over a list. But if you remember, let me go back to my raw data. For my invoice, I have an array of data that are the line items for this invoice. Each item has a name, a price, and a quantity. Let's look at how we can add this to our template. I'm gonna go back to advanced. I'm gonna go to tables and lists, and I'm gonna insert a table. And what's cool here is that the add-on looked at my table, at my data. It recognized only one thing was a list of information. So when I click that drop down, it's only going to offer items. It's looked at my data, it's sniffed it, it's made intelligent decisions on what to offer where. So now that I've said items, I want to pick the columns that I want for that table. So the first thing I want is name, and again, see how it kind of helps me out there. Next thing I want is price. And then the last thing I want is quantity. And when I hit insert table, bam, it does all the hard work for me. Now I can go in here and I can modify this. If I wanted price right aligned, for example, I could do that. If I want my header, like I had on that final example, I can go in there and make that a heading 2. I'm not stuck with what it outputs, but it does kind of the hard work for me to get started. And notice here it has one row. What's going to happen is that our system's going to take my data, it's going to take this template, and it's going to intelligently kind of loop over and show each of these items.
Hey, Ray.
Yes.
There's a couple of questions that we've actually gotten in the chat pod. Then, since you're in the context, I thought it might be good to ask them. Jay asked here, can you integrate images with this as well?
Absolutely. So one of the examples that I'm not going to show today, just for time purposes, is that you can put an image in this Word document and then pass it in via JSON. You do have to base64 encode it, but once you have that, you can absolutely have dynamic images in here. Ben, you have a great article on our blog that shows some tips for working with this. I have a demo that's hopefully coming out in a week or two where I actually take data and pass it to a charting service and get a dynamic chart and then embed it into our API. So yes, you can do it. The only thing to keep in mind is that you'll have to base64 encode it before you use it.
And then the other question that came from that was, because you were showing before the question around or creating a PDF, but what if this was also going to be a Word document?
It's really one line. If I go back to my original code, when I had my document merge options object, if I just change that from PDF to docx, that's it. You're done. So my command line tool actually picks that up automatically. So if I ask for invoice.docx, this he said, I broke something. It supports it. Oh yes, I used the same file name. Don't do that. If I did invoice output 1, it will, because I'm live typing, I'm breaking. Trust me, you can absolutely output a Word document.
Oh, good. That's all we have for questions for right now. I'll let you continue on. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Oh yeah, so I just added the table right there, and I was going to prove that it works. And let me go back up to the last thing that worked. So again, I have saved this Word document. My data already has the array of information. And what did I break? Let me save. Invoice.docx. I didn't erase it by accident, did I? So I built my command line to say, hey, I'll do whatever you say. And I think I actually overwrote my invoice document. And let me just kind of make sure it's there. Invoice2.docx. All right, I will just switch to using that so we can go on. All right. Darn me building a tool that did exactly what I told it to. All right, so here is the line items. You can see all the various things I bought. If I were to close this and actually modify my data, I'm going to go into invoice JSON. And you know what? I need more cats. And along with a smelly cat, I have a somewhat large cat, which describes pretty much all of my cats. Different price, and I will go a little bit less extreme, only 10. So again, all I'm doing is changing my data here. I output it again, and I should see the new line item. And there we go. And just plain works. I really, really like that. So there's one more thing that I want to quickly show you, is that everything that you see in terms of those tags, we are using an open source project called JSONata, and that kind of handles that template language. And if you want to get deeper into what you could do with their APIs, you can go to the jasonnata.org website and look at the docs and see kind of the more advanced functions that they support. So one of the things that I want to add to my invoice is that total at the bottom. And the way that I did that total was by looking at the docs and doing some readings. And what I discovered is that we have, I'm going to paste it in here, we have a function called sum. And this sum function can be applied to an array of data. And this array of data, I can actually say what I want to use when I'm doing my summing. So that's a bit complex, but essentially what I have here is the expression items.paren price.quantity basically says, look at my array of items, and for each record in that array, take price times quantity, take that value, and then this all gets passed into the sum value. And so this essentially will take all those line items and create a sum for it. And if I run this one more time, I should see that final, and I've spent $247.66 on cats, which is totally feasible. One thing I'll point out is that there's a lot of really, really deep support for doing things like formatting and other kind of crazy cool things. Right now, I am working on an article for our blog about formatting functions. One of the examples is that if that dollar value there was in the thousands or millions, and I wanted to automatically include things like commas, for example, you can absolutely do that with JSONata and document generation. Ben already asked a question about images. The other feature that I'm not showing today, but that's also possible, is that you could also integrate Adobe Sign into here as well. But you can see my final document. That formatting is not great, but I could just work on it in Microsoft Word, and I don't have to worry about modifying my code. Any questions?
So one of the things that that I find really interesting, Ray, about this is also the applications of how this can apply to a lot of different use cases. I mean, I know one of the questions that we got in the comments earlier was around, could you also turn this into Word documents as well? And one of the things that I love about that is that this doesn't just apply to like that output of, take it and send it to somebody and it's done. It also could be that work in progress type of document that you are working with as well. So, I wrote up this contract, I got it 90% of the way there. Now we have to do all this redlining. We have to do all this, back and forth. Or I wrote this proposal. It got me 80% of the way there. Now I have to, customize a little bit more to wherever it is there. So it's really kind of cool and dynamic. One of the questions that I had for you on this is, what do you think is some of the things that really just make you excited about some of the different ways that you can leverage this?
So I think, and this may be funny as a developer, but I love the fact that I don't have to change code. I love the fact that I can work in Microsoft Word. I could use Word almost as my programming environment per se. And this makes it much more approachable to non-developers. So I can absolutely work with somebody who has never written a line of code in their life. I could give them this Word document and they could do things like updating the formatting, laying things out a bit different to make it look nicer. Just in general, I am a big fan of development tools that are friendly to non-developers and that are more opening or more open and more approachable to people who come from a non-traditional background, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes total sense. And actually, one of the things that I think I'm really excited about is the fact that we brought PDF tools into things like Power Automate, which is so low code and easy to be able to use. It's going to be exciting when we also bring some of the things like document generation into that as well, where you could be using that directly from like SharePoint or from Teams or Dynamics or those types of tools. So it gets really kind of exciting, because then that means that it's designers or it's those people who are working and live their life in Word can do what they do best and not have to worry about being scared by code or anything like that. So one of the things I want to touch on is kind of a follow-up from what you mentioned there was a couple of things to help people actually get started. So I know Alicia mentioned the website here. One of the things that's cool here is those templates that are available that give you some Word documents for you to be able to start with, as well as the actual JSON data so that you can walk through some of those steps that Ray was going through, and it makes it easy so you don't have to start from scratch creating any of those. So all those templates are available on the website there for you to be able to use. You know, certificate of completion, a service receipt, sales order. So go check those out. Those are extremely helpful for those. And also, the other thing is that Ray, you also mentioned some of the things with the blog posts and some of the tips that we've been posting on there. So one of the things that I encourage, again, all of you to go on to, there's a link up at the top, but I'm also going to put a link right here that if you go to the Adobe Tech blog and you go to the Document Cloud section, some of the things that Ray was touching on are available right in here. So things like the 8 tips of using images. So for Jay that posted in there, this is extremely helpful set of tips for using images along with those documents there. You know, some of the deep dives of getting started with this. Ray created a fantastic blog on how to basically do Hello World. Some of the stuff that he showed today, it's a step-by-step walkthrough in there, as well as starting to getting into the nitty-gritty stuff. And again, we're going to be diving into a lot more stuff on the blog, so please go and subscribe, because we have a lot of neat stuff that we're doing in there. Any final thoughts, Ray, on this?
No, just like reach out to us. Like, we're all on Twitter. I love getting questions about this. We also have our support forums. We're also active on Stack Overflow. So I am enjoying the heck out of playing with this. So if you send me a question, you will make me happy. And it's all about making me happy.
And we always want to make you happy, which for the amount of cats that you're invoicing for, you definitely have to be happy.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'd like to invite Joel and Alicia back for a new segment that we're going to be doing here, which we're calling Cool Cuts, which is talking about some of the cool things that we're seeing out there in the world. So, Alicia, I'll start with you. What is a cool thing that you're seeing out in the world?
Well, thanks, Ben. I'm glad you asked. So as you guys might know, I'm actually a serial hobbyist. And this summer, because summer's coming up quickly here in Southern California, I'm actually getting involved in surfing. I know I've been waiting a long time to do this. It's very intimidating to start learning out there sometimes, but I did want to share a cool volume to weight calculator. And when you're surfing, this is super important, especially when you're starting. Because the amount that you weigh and the level of surfing that you're at requires, a larger board for the lower level that you are. So let's say I'm a beginner, I would need a really big, like very large, high volume board so that I can be more stable in the water. But if you can see down here, if I go down, pro level surfers actually use these really super small, low volume boards, and you'll see them like doing tricks all the time. But I thought it was a really cool calculator to use in determining what kind of board I need. And so with this information, I actually also found a cool website which offers soft boards, because I worry about hitting myself in the head when I go out there with a really big board. And so these are actually all soft tops, and I'm thinking about getting this one here that's kind of cool looking, and it actually has some really nice designs on the bottom. So maybe next time I can tell you about all of my adventures in surfing, okay? So back to you, Ben.
Awesome, thanks, Alicia. All right, Ray, what do you got?
So during quarantine, I started to do a lot more baking and cooking. And one of the things that I love is that when I want to know how to cook something, I know for me, I want to go to a website where the first 2,000 to 5,000 words on the recipe page are about how the author went to Italy and they fell in love, and then they got dumped, and they fell in love again and got dumped again. And then, 5,000 pages about, all this crap, and then the recipes at the very, very bottom. I love that. As in, I hate it. So there's a website and app called Saffron. The website is mysaffronapp.com. And what it does is you point that at a URL to one of those recipes that just drones on and on about crap before it gets to the details. It parses out all that crap. It uses intelligence, AI, I have no idea what it uses, but it parses it super well and gives you just the ingredients, just the steps. And what's nice is that they have a great mobile app that's super easy to use. You can obviously add your own recipes as well, but it's been a great tool for me as I begin to bake and just cook more in general. Again, it's Saffron, mysaffronapp.com. Thank you, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Let's make sure that I can show myself here. There we go. Cool. Awesome. So thanks, Ray. So I got one myself, which is actually something I was doing recently. So like a lot of people, I was getting my vaccine and stuff like that. And one of the things I was trying to figure out was, how do I not have to take my card with me all the time? And when I pull it up, how can I make it easy for me to pull it up? So I actually created a quick video of a cool tip that I found using the free Adobe Scan that makes it much easier for me. So let's have a look here. All right, so here we can see that I have scanned in my COVID-19 vaccination record card using Adobe Scan. And I want to pull this up when I need to, so I can actually go to the More menu here, and I can say Add to Siri. And I'm going to put in a note for Show My COVID card. And when I click Add to Siri here, now whenever I'm using my phone and I need to pull up my COVID card, I can just simply pull up Siri, Show My COVID card. And there we go. It pulls it up right inside of Adobe Scan for me to be able to reference. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing that I was doing with the COVID card, but then also it was helpful for me for all sorts of other documents, maybe like my insurance card and things like that. But it's just kind of neat to be able to just pull that up, be able to ask the question to Siri and pull up some of those common documents there. So now, Joel, what do you got for us?
Okay, thanks, Ben. So we actually did a practice run of this show yesterday, and I ended up going to Alicia's website, and after entering my athletic ability and weight, it recommended I get a boat. So that's what happened for me. So at any rate, not to miss an opportunity for shameless self-promotion, instead of showing someone else's website, I'm going to take you to my CodePen site and show you something interesting that you can do with Embed API. So Ben, if you could throw that up on the screen, that'd be great. So the idea here is show you how you can replace the loading screen for when a PDF file is being fetched and then converted for display in the browser. Now, in our playground that we have for Embed API, we've got basically the single line of code, and that involves passing in a URL to your PDF. So you're loading the API, then you're loading the PDF, and that can take a bit of time that you don't necessarily want to inflict on your end users. So what I've done here is I've simply got a button here, and if you click on it, you'll see a brief loading screen, and then the PDF file will pop up almost immediately. And this is because I've preloaded the PDF file, I've preloaded the API, and I basically have it ready to go so that the only thing we have to do is render the PDF file before it's displayed on the screen. So let me refresh that and walk you through how this is actually done. My HTML code is really just 3 divs up here. I've got the container for the button, I've got the loader, and I've got the embedded view. And they're all laying on top of each other, and only one of it is visible at a time. So when you click the button, a function gets run that fetches the PDF file and converts that to a file or to a promise that passes the content into the embed API. So here's the interesting part of that. So we're going to fetch the PDF and load that in as the content rather than aiming it at a URL. So we can preload this thing. But the other part that's really interesting is this section here. What we're going to do is listen for the app rendering done event to fire. And once that fires, that's when we're going to actually display the PDF file. So right here is when app rendering done has fired, that's when we're going to load the PDF file. So what ends up happening is the button layer gets hidden, the loading screen gets brought up when we start the process. When the PDF file rendering is done, that's when we show it. So again, if you simply click, it loads almost immediately and displays it on your screen. So pass that back to you, Ben.
Well, what an exit. All right, cool. So what I'd like to do is Ray, Alicia, Joel, why don't you come back on? Because there were a couple of questions that were going on in the chat, and I wanted to see what people might have some thoughts on there. So one of the questions that Nishant asked here was, is there something to generate PDF from AEM, preferably using content from a page? So I guess one of the first things there is that AEM, being a web content management system, has HTML content. And one of the cool things that we have is, as part of PDF tools, the ability for you to take HTML content and convert it into a PDF. So that's actually something that you can use to be able to take the that information and then output that in there. One other point that I also want to touch on there is that AEM does have the ability for you to create PDFs using AEM forms. So that's something that's built in there. So if you have AEM forms and that component in there, you can actually take advantage of that to be able to dynamically create PDFs in there. But for everything else, we also have our APIs available there to be able to dynamically convert that stuff. Ray, Alicia, did you have any thoughts on that as well?
I don't have a lot of thoughts. I'm not actually that familiar with all of the capabilities of AEM, but I do know that we have a lot of customers that are using AEM that are also leveraging some of our APIs to integrate different types of functionality, like what you were talking about, Ben, where maybe they need to organize some pages, maybe they need some document generation. So our APIs fit into that section as well.
And one thing also to touch on, another question that Nishant had was about like SDKs and stuff. I think he's probably, Nishant, please feel free to reply in the comments. But I think what you're applying to is some of the document SDKs in the context of AEM. And one of the things that we do have as part of Document Services is we have our Java API SDK as well, so that you could also leverage to be able to create serverlets and stuff like that to be able to use with AEM. Joel, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to tag on to that. I think the interesting point here is not so much whether you could do it through AEM or not, but more that as long as you can get your data, the information that you want to appear in the document into JSON format, you can use document generation to create that document. So we can connect to really anything that's capable of generating JSON, or you could even take your data, if it outputs from your system as XML, easily convert that into a JSON format and then use that. So there are a number of ways that you can get the inputs that you need, which is essentially a a Microsoft Word document plus some JSON data and generate a document from that. You just might have to put something in between your data source and the document generation API.
And I think one thing also maybe to add to that is, as it relates to AEM, one thing that you could do is you could take things like document generation API, and you could also mix that with things like PDF embed API in AEM. So you can embed the outputted PDF and put it directly into AEM. And actually, one of the cool things that we did last year is we created a core component in here called the PDF Viewer Core Component, which allows you to use the PDF Embed API to render PDFs in line as a component within an AEM page. So that makes it easy for you to be able to drop that in there. So what you could then do is use things like the API to generate the document and then provide that into here. It looks like my computer's running a little bit slowly right now. But similar to what we see here, you can take that into any AEM page and drop that in there. So that could be a good also tie in there for any of your documents there. Any other comments on that?
I don't.
All right. Well, with that, I think we have come to the end. Unless we get in the next minute or so, we get some last minute questions, I think we're going to start to wrap up. So as a couple of action items for all of you, again, what I encourage you to do is head on over to the Adobe Tech blog to check out some of the latest articles that we're working on to leverage with document generation, with PDF tools and so forth, to get the most out of that. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to follow us on Twitter and also use the hashtag PDF Papercuts. If you have any questions, please feel free to use that. Along with that, if you also have any questions while you're working on that, please feel free to go to the Adobe Document Services forum, or the Adobe support community, as we call it, where we're constantly engaging on there. Please feel free to go ask any of your questions, and we're happy to answer them there.
Ben,
So,
before we close out, did you want to quickly mention Adobe Summit?
Yes, that's a great point. Thank you so much. So we actually, if you want to learn more about some of the things that we're doing with things like PDF Tools API, Adobe Sign, as well as PDF Embed API, we actually have a number of sessions that we're going to be doing at Adobe Summit, which is next week, and it's entirely free. So 27th to the 29th. We have sessions there. And if you go into your sessions here, you can search for either Alicia or myself. And we have a number of sessions. So let's pull those up quickly here. We're going to go and we're going to search for myself here. So what we'll then see in here is we have a session, which is a session all around how you can waiting for it here. Okay, we'll go with this here. All right, so we have a session here, which is how you can take your PDFs and no longer turn them into an analytics black box. That's going to be happening on Tuesday next week. We also have a deep dive actual session where we're going to walk through how you can use the PDF Embed API as part of TW 124, which is on Tuesday. And again, that's going to actually be getting into the code and walk through as part of that lab there. And then on TW 125, it's all about document automation within Power Platform. So using Adobe Sign, PDF tools inside of Power Platform, that will be part of that session, which will be on Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific. So all great topics for you to go check out. Please go and join us. They're wonderful deep dives. Steve and Alicia and I have gone through those tutorials, and there's also some takeaways so you can walk through step by step with each one of those tutorials there. All right, so with that, thank you everybody for coming to the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments or feedback, please feel free to drop them in the comments below, and please subscribe. We will have our next episode next month, and we will be talking about some of the agenda and broadcasting that out very soon. So thank you everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Bye.
You guys.